My name is Robert Sepulveda, and for the better part of 8 years, I worked for the Oahu Ghost Tours.
What made you want to get into like the ghost tours and everything?
You know, actually,
it'd be interesting to hear some stories and kind of go out there and see some things. But then what I found out was that there's a very, very difficult time in finding guides for the job. So the owner of the company just kept kind of pestering me, hey, come on, you want to be a guide? You know, we can do some training, you can be a guide. So after a while, I decided to give it a shot, and I decided to, okay, stick with it. It was pretty good, you know.
The closest one, which is the Hawaii Theater.
Okay. Yeah, Hawaii Theater, I know that it goes back to about 1922, and it was the premier theater in Hawaii for many, many years before being shut down, and I believe they reopened it in the late 80s, and since then it's been doing really, really well. The haunting that goes back to there that I know of, they always talk about a friendly Chinese man that's waiting in the wings. I believe in 1989 or 96, somewhere thereabouts, there was a couple of productions. One might have been Dreamgirls. And as the dancers and the play actors were walking through the, I guess the basement area to get from one side of the stage to another, they noticed that there was a Chinese man waiting in the wings. And they didn't think nothing of it. They just thought that, you know, this guy worked here and he was just watching us. But when they got done with their productions, they asked one of the producers, hey, so, you know, why don't you introduce us to your friend over there? And the guy asked, what do you mean, friend? What friend? And they said, well, there's an old Chinese man that's hanging out back there. He says, well, there's nobody on staff that we know works here. But one story that I did read up on, I believe this took place in the early 90s. There was a young school production. These young girls, probably somewhere between
3rd and 6th grade, they were doing this Japanese production. Part of the production required that they change into their kimono outfits, and then they would line up at the bottom, and then they would go up and, of course, do their performance. And they were doing practice performances before everything started. Well, as they were doing that one day, they all were lined up at the bottom of the stairs. The girl in front was saying, I can't get past, I can't get past. One of the girls in back, again, stuck her head around and says, I see the bloody Chinese man back there again. So no one knows for sure the history and the story of what's behind this Chinese man. Maybe he was murdered. Maybe there was something that happened nearby.
Iolani Palace.
Okay, Iolani Palace, again, prior to the Iolani Palace being built, there was another Iolani Palace there, but it wasn't really much of a palace. It was sort of this, I guess you could say, a mansion that got termite eaten. And of course, then David Kalakaua was the catalyst that started saying, hey, we need to go ahead and have this place built.
And this place is known to really have a lot of spirits, but especially the presence of Queen Liliuokalani, because most of the Hawaiians know that that was where she had spent many months isolated because of, after the overthrow, she was, I guess, faulted in a trial for being one that was going to instigate a counter-revolution, so to speak. So they had a sentence. Now, initially the sentence was they wanted to put her to death. That was something that they knew that would incite the Hawaiian people beyond control. So they said, you know what, let's not do that. Instead, let's just have her isolated from the Hawaiian people up there in that one corner room for about 7 months. Now, she could get occasional visitors that were designated, but mainly there was a chambermaid that tended to her. So workers at the Iolani Palace, the docents and others, they say that, especially there's always, I believe, 2 people that work there 24/7. They're the security and the night crew we've spoken to on several occasions. They say maybe once a month or maybe even more than that, sometimes the room alarm will go off and they have to go up there and reset it. When they enter the room, it's regularly about 5 to 10 degrees colder than any place else in there. I had a young girl one time on my tour, not a young girl, she said as a young girl, her aunt used to be one of the docents there and she would visit her once and every so often. One day she noticed a lady crying on the veranda area. She said, Auntie, come, there's a lady crying out there, something's wrong. So the lady and the, I guess her little niece, the girl lady that's telling me the story, they went out to the veranda, didn't see anybody. And she said, honey, where did the lady go? And then he said, I don't know, but she was just here. Well, let's go back inside the palace and see if we can find her. Maybe she went inside. So as they were walking around, the niece said, no, that's her right there. And she pointed to the portrait of the queen herself. So that makes a lot of sense because there is an overarching sense of sadness in parts of the palace because, as you know, the queen was losing the kingdom and seeing the suffering of the Hawaiian people. So there is a sense of that. There's also a story of workers, every so often, they would hear the sounds of the piano being played. And when they look on the security camera, the keys are not moving, but yet the sound would continue to permeate. Another story that was kind of interesting, once there was this Hawaiian man, he would always just come up yelling and screaming. He was dressed in native Hawaiian wear, just yelling and screaming at the palace. And, you know, everybody was wondering, who is this guy? But no one could recognize who he is or why he is yelling there. So they feel that maybe he is a guard of the palace that perhaps is sort of upset with what is going on in there. Now, a well-known story by Dr. Glenn Grant, I think this took place in the 1980s. A young military couple, they just came to the island. So on their way to Waikiki, I believe, they wanted to stop by the grounds of the Iolani Palace so they could take a nice pictures and send it back home to their folks. As they were wandering around, the wife told the husband, hey honey, why don't you go stand near the stairs there and I can go ahead and take a few pictures of you so I can send home. So, you know, back then they had the Instamatic cameras and such. The husband is waiting for the wife to sort of get everything prepped, and as he's waiting by the stairs, he's looking around because he feels something uncomfortable there. So as he's, you know, waiting, he says, honey, come on, let's get this done. She grabs the camera, of course, she takes a few pictures, and almost immediately after getting done, he says, all right, let's get out of here. And she's kind of befuddled, saying, wait a minute, honey, we just kind of got here. I want to look at a few more places. He says, no, honey, we got to get out of here. We got to go. We got to get on over to Waikiki. So he kind of escorts her right next to the car, and she's kind of befuddled, says, hun, I'm not going to get into the car with you until you tell me why we're in such a rush. He said, hun, you know, I just don't know how to describe it, but I've been in situations before when I felt things were ominous. You know, I don't know if it was because I was in training situations in the Army, but this didn't feel right over there. Well, back then, of course, you had to wait days before your pictures were basically able to be looked at. So once they got the pictures back, they were really disappointed because when they flipped through the pictures, there was nothing but dark blanks. Like, this couldn't be our pictures. We took nice pictures. But the person at the desk said, no, these are the camera rolls you turned into us. But finally, they got to one picture that did come out. And the husband is standing there on the stairs, but about 3 to 4 feet behind husband, there's an old Hawaiian warrior that's dressed in, of course, the malo, has the spear, staring at husband. Now, what is the reason for this? No one knows for sure, but Iolani Palace, long before the palace was there, it was part of an ahupua'a in which was called the district of Ko. And Ko had some of the most powerful ali'is that dwelt there. And so maybe this was a ali'i warrior that was on guard for their ali'is, because this man, the husband, was a man of the military. So his essence was that of a warrior himself. So maybe he just had to make sure that the husband did not present a threat. Yeah. So there's multitudes of stories of the Iolani Palace, but you know, again, you could just go on for days and hours, but I don't know how long you want to go with it.